Good morning. My name is Kelly Wathen, and I will be reading the scriptures this morning. It can be found in the Pew Bible on page 116. It's Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 6. And God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourselves an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. This is the word of God.
This winter, we're looking at the 10 Commandments. We're looking at these 10 rules for life, is the way we've talked about them, these rules that God gave in order to not only keep us from slavery to sin, but also to set us free to live good life, the life He intends for us. There's a recent survey not too long ago, I think it was in 2018, that asked Americans if the 10 Commandments were still relevant, whether they were religious or not, and asked them one by one, took the 10 Commandments, asked them each one, what do you think this is relevant? And something like 94% of Americans said, do not murder, still relevant. Something like, and it's dangerous for me to do this, something like 38% said the first few, not relevant. Do not murder, makes sense. Do not commit adultery, makes sense. Do not steal, makes sense. No other gods, no idols? Not anymore. That's not that big of a deal anymore, is it? But is it? I think that they are still relevant. I would put it this way: if you want to have a healthy, living, real spiritual life, if you recognize you're a spiritual being and you want to live a vital spiritual life, you want to have a spiritual life that doesn't become toxic and doesn't destroy you, but actually is life-giving and real and healthy, you must follow these commandments. The first four, all of which are about our relationship with God before we start talking about our relationship with others. Today, we're not going to talk about all the first four, just the first two. 1 and 2. No other gods before me, and no graven images. I want us to look at both of those, two no's, these two rules, and then the yes that is implied by each of them. In other words, two things you must, if you want to have a vital spiritual life, say no to in order to say yes to something better. 2 no's, 1 yes this morning. 2 no's. First no. No other gods. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. If you want to have healthy, vigorous spiritual life, a true spiritual life, not toxic, not destroying you, you have to obey this one. God commands His people right from the start to make Him the center of our meaning and value and authority in your life. Nothing. Here's how I would paraphrase this one, though no other gods works perfectly well. You must not replace God with a rival God, lowercase g. You must not replace God with a rival. God must be the one whose approval you seek, whose love you live in, whose authority you obey, whose reality is first and foremost in your heart and your life, who you live for and most and love best and seek wholly. This is absolutely essential. This is absolutely essential because the whole Bible says if you don't worship God, you will put something else in the place of God in your life. There is no spiritual neutral for human beings because human beings are spiritual beings. We have spiritual needs. We have spiritual longings. We were made for God. Augustine, the church father, said we were made for God and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in Him. And your heart and my heart, if not given to God, will not just float in some kind of neutral. We will we will seek, we will worship, we will find rest in, we will find our value in something else. Something else will direct our life, give it meaning, give us a reason for living. There's no neutral. Everybody worships. What would it look like to have a rival replace something else, replace God's place in your heart? Martin Luther, the reformer, said this, that to which your heart clings and entrusts itself is, I say, really your God. And he's just saying the same thing. There's no neutral. And so there's something that your heart is clinging to. There's something that your heart is entrusting your life to. And if it's not God, it will be something. What is it? What is it? David Zoll, who's a writer, has written a book called Seculosity, very interesting book. He says, he talks about this. What does your heart entrust itself to? He says, this functional God is what we, quoting him, what we lean on to tell us we're okay, that our lives matter. It's another name for all the ladders we spend our days climbing toward a dream of wholeness. He says it refers to our guilt management system. Our guilt management system. In other words, what do you get up in the morning and say, this is what I'm living for? What do you, when you're feeling down, say, or when you're feeling guilty, say, well, at least I have this, or at least I do this? What is the thing that your heart turns to, entrusting itself to? Zoll puts it another way. He says, it's what we find our enoughness in. He made up that word, enoughness. He said, if you listen carefully, you'll hear the word enough everywhere. You'll hear people scrambling to be successful enough, happy enough, thin enough, wealthy enough, influential enough, desired enough, charitable enough, good enough. We believe instinctively that if we were to reach some benchmark in our lives, then value, vindication, and love would be ours. We're entrusting our heart to something. But the problem is we were made for God, and our hearts are restless until we find our rest with Him. And if we make something else our God in the place of God, it will ultimately not only lead us away from the true God, it will mess up the thing itself. So, for example, if you make a God out of family or romance or relationship, you will make a mess out of that family and that relationship or that romance. If you look to another person to give you everything, all your validation, meet all of your needs, make sure you are loved enough, you will do one of two things. Either you will never leave a relationship that you'll never break it off, you'll never say a hard thing to somebody because you need that person in your life so desperately. They're filling a need that is a godlike need in your life, and so you'll stay too long. Or you'll put all kinds of pressure on somebody. Have you ever been in a situation where someone is looking to you for all of their love, all of their value, all of their vindication? You can't expect someone else to give that to you. It will cause a mess of your relationship. Or your career. If you look for your career to be your God. I went into Lithgow Library this week because my kids are always checking out books. And so I have to go in and ask for the ones that they have been set aside that they found online. It's a great problem to have. I went into Lithgow, I looked up, and there's they put up all the new books up on they have a display, and I immediately saw it because of the cover. It jumped off. It's a brand new book, not by a Christian. It says, Work Won't Love You Back. That's the title. Work Won't Love You Back. The author argues, I found a review online, went home, the author argues that corporations increasingly today are using the language, family-like language for work, saying we're a family and we love each other and you got to love your work, and they're smuggling in with this a lot more expectations that you give your whole life to your work. But the problem is work won't love you back. The subtitle of the book is How Devotion to Our Jobs Keeps Us Exploited, Exhausted, and Alone. The author writes, this work, talking about work, assuming it will do all this, creates an illusion that if we work hard enough, we will be rewarded with advancement, belonging, affinity, self-worth, instead of doing a good job if it becomes your God. Or money. I mean, these are the common ones, right? Money. Researchers point out if you have enough money, to a certain point, it makes you more happy, if you have what you need. But the diminishing returns quickly accelerate on money. More and more money does not make you more and more happy. It's been demonstrated by all kinds of researchers. And the bottom line is, not only does it not leave you more happy, it can do all kinds of other things to your personality and your life if you seek it. And ultimately, if you seek it, you will leave it behind. You know the story of the very rich woman in a small town who died, the old story. And a lot of people were talking about the will and what was going on with the will. And so someone approached the reverend who was doing the funeral and said, "Tell me, how much did she leave behind?" And the reverend said, "All of it." If you make money, money's not a bad thing. Family's not a bad thing. Work's not a bad thing. If you look to that, if you entrust your heart to it, if you say, when you're feeling down, this is the thing, when I achieve this is the thing that will make me feel loved and vindicated and belonging. If you seek approval, be constantly a slave to others' opinions. And if you can even do this in a religious way, this is all through the Scripture as well, you can turn your own religious performance and effort, your own work, your own sense of being a good enough Christian, you can begin to very subtly, instead of worshiping God, worship your own performance, or at least trust in that. Begin to look to that so that you say, like the tax collector, at least I'm not like people out there, or even at least I'm not like other Christians. Instead of worshiping the God who says, I and I alone save you, love you, will give you the deepest needs of your heart, you don't do it, you don't achieve it, and you don't find it in any of these other good things. You come to me. You come to me. What is the functional? This is the first one, and this is the rule. You cannot, you must not replace God with some rival. Which raises the question that we should ask, what is the functional God of your life? Whose approval are you seeking most? Whose commands do you obey? What thing, what desire, when it commands, you jump? Just one click, you purchase. What determines your identity? Where are you seeking your enoughness? When you feel guilty, where do you turn to tell you you're okay? What gods rule your heart? You are a spiritual being. And if you want a spiritual life to be vital and life-giving instead of destroy you, then you have to live by this rule. What do you do if you find other gods in your place? The Old Testament rule is pretty clear. You throw them out and cast them down. You find ways to remove them and root them out. Some of that is easier. I had a professor who had said at one point, if you are addicted to money and spending and your credit card, this was back in the days when you couldn't just one click with Amazon, you don't even have to have a credit card. But he said, with your credit card, then you should need to do some plastic surgery and cut it up. Stop getting calendars. Cut out certain things. Or even better, radically give if money is controlling you. If you are seeking other people's approval on Instagram and Facebook likes, shut it off. Get off of there. Stop. Some others of them are deeper and harder. The starting point in all of these is simply to recognize and confess before God if something else is taking his place in your life, and confess it. And repent of it. This is the first rule of spiritual life. There's no neutral. You'll worship something. And God says, no replacements. And then the second rule kind of relates to it. Some Christian traditions put these two rules together. They're so closely related, but I think that there is a distinction. First rule, no other gods. Don't replace God with any rival. Second rule, no graven images, which I would paraphrase this way. Don't replace God and don't remake God in an image, your image. The command starts in verse 4, with what seems like a sweeping condemnation of all art. Did you notice that? Verse 4, you might think that. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth below, or in the waters, or in the earth beneath, or in the waters below. Is he saying you can't draw? You can't paint? No, clearly not. The point of it becomes clear in verse 5. You shall not make an image, you shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. And in fact, the words image and in the NIV translation form or likeness, those are both common words for idols. Just visible things made to physical, visible object that represents God, is used in worship, and is worshipped itself. Now this, again, I think is separate command. The first is do not have any other God, and this one is don't make anything into a God. And this was part of Israel's story. This command tells us that we can we can even seek to worship the right God, but worship him in the wrong way. Remaking the living God into a lesser image. This was part of Israel's story. And not long after Mount Sinai, there's a story of Israel worshiping the golden calf. And Moses leaves them for a little while. Do you remember this? Moses leaves the people for a little while. It's in Exodus 32. And the people get nervous. They can't see Moses. They can't see God. They want something tangible. They begin to ask for an idol. And so Aaron makes a bull, a calf, a bull out of gold. And what's really interesting is when he introduces it to them, he doesn't say, let me introduce you to a whole new God. He says, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. And then he announces, tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord. That's the God of Israel. In other words, what Aaron is doing is not so much saying, well, let's just get rid of the God that brought us out of Egypt. He's just saying, I understand. You want to see something visible. You want to see something tangible. Let's just make a bull. You know, bulls are big, strong animals. God would probably be honored to be pictured as a bull. Let's make a bull and give the people what they want. We'll add to our worship a visible representation, an image, an idol, to show them the presence of God, the invisible God. But here we begin to see, again, just how serious these rules are. This provokes God's wrath. In Exodus 32, his judgment is swift and severe. And here, in the Ten Commandments, the second commandment comes with a stern warning. Verse 5, you shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commands. Love and hate here are covenant terms, those who either worship God in this exclusive love relationship or those who don't, who break that relationship. God says, who show him hate in that way. And God says, now, I am a jealous God, more on that in a moment, punishing the children for the sin of the parents of the third and fourth generation. This is often troubled people, and I think we should be clear on what I do not believe this is saying. I do not believe this is saying, even though the children are innocent, I'm going to take out on them what their parents have done. Elsewhere in the law of Moses, in Deuteronomy 24:16, we read this, fathers shall not be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their fathers. Each is to die for their own sin. Each is responsible for their own. However, the nature of human relationships is one in which we are intricately bound together, especially in the family. And the truth is, the sobering truth for anyone who has ever been privileged to be a parent is that the sins of the parents always affect the kids. Always. And they can set the trajectory for children who carry on the same patterns and choose to walk in the same way. And God is saying, well, just because they learned it from their parents, I'll let them off the hook. No. His desire to bless is profound. Let me say that. Dr. Doug Stewart, who's a professor of Old Testament, says this is the greatest numerical contrast in the Bible. I will punish to the third and fourth generation, but I will show love to 1,000 generations of those who love me. The heart of God is to bless and bless abundantly to the 1,000th generation. And yet the warning is clear. Nothing must be allowed to replace God, including physical objects. Well, how does that happen? I mean, most of us probably don't have a stand with an idol set up somewhere in our house. But the truth is, physical objects, even physical objects used in worship, can begin to take on a place of inordinate affection in our lives, can be bowed down to and served. Of course, there are other traditions, Christian worshiping communities in which there are images that are venerated and bowed down to. I'm a Protestant. I think that's a violation of the second commandment. But it's also putting these things in worship into a place that they shouldn't be. This can take many forms. There are church communities where the church communities now, the members' first devotion is actually to a building or a sense of tradition or a family history. And they have forgotten any meaningful worship of the God the building was built to worship in the first place. It's not just buildings, other visible things. Visible things can become more important, even in the act of worship, to replacing God. We live in a culture of images and celebrities and personalities in which there are particular preachers who sometimes become the center of worship services supposedly devoted to God. The prosperity, or the preacher becomes the image, the center, the brand. It's a complete abomination. Years ago, this happens in strange ways and things you wouldn't expect. Some years ago, I saw a prosperity preacher, a television preacher, and I was in college, just about to go to seminary, and I saw he was raising money, and he said, if you give now to this amount, I'll send you the Bible that had his name on it, this kind of Bible, and I'll sign it. And I thought, wow, people have been reading this for years. Now they finally figured out who wrote it, this guy. What a joke. Strangely enough, 10 years later, a very different preacher who's been very vocal, very well known, very vocal in condemning prosperity preachers. I had a reason to meet someone who was a part of a ministry with him. And I had not known this person long. He wrote to me. We got in contact about somebody that we were both working with. And so my first phone call with him from out of state, and he said, is by way of introducing himself to me. He said, I just want you to know I have two Bibles by this particular preacher whose name is also on the Bible that were signed by him. And I've given one of those to this young man that we were talking about. And that's how much I care for him. I gave him one of the Bibles signed by this guy. It's so strange. Then he talked to our senior pastor. He had a reason to talk to our senior pastor. And I was talking to our senior pastor later and said, did you talk to so-and-so? And he said, yes. He said, he told me the strangest thing. First time meeting him, I had a Bible signed by so-and-so, and I gave it. What weird stuff happens in the church. It's an abomination. If the Bible is the Word of God, and if God is who God says He is, present and holy and glorious, how dare we replace Him or with anything or any other visible symbol? It's not just that. Images don't just replace, but they can remake God. Can I make you uncomfortable? Let's talk about this image right here. Some Protestants would say there should be no image of God which would include an image of Jesus. I don't believe that is so, but I want to warn you of the danger of images of Jesus. They're necessarily selective. We can come to really love and care for them more than we should. It's just an image. Certainly it would be ridiculous and troubling if we loved an image of Jesus more than Jesus. Maybe the deeper danger, though, is just that they become selective. An image, any image we pick, this is what David Gill, one writer, says, any image is necessarily partial and thus deceptive. At best, an image may capture one aspect of God's character. his grandeur or his complexity, his beauty or his simplicity, but no image can ever capture the totality of the living God. When we pick one image of Jesus, the danger is we begin to just see Jesus in one way. But where is the Jesus? Let's not lose the Jesus that we looked at in Daniel chapter 10 a couple of weeks ago, or in Revelation chapter 2, the Jesus who is glowing with light, inapproachable light, whose voice is booming like the sound of many waters, the one who, when people see him, fall at his face as dead. That Jesus. Don't lose that Jesus. What did Jesus look like? The Bible never tells us, but he almost assuredly did not look like that. For one, he was not white. Two, I can make you this argument later, he probably didn't have long hair. And he might have even been short. Did you know? Skeletal research from first century Jews, and the Bible says Jesus was a first century Jew in Palestine, show that the average male height was 5 foot 1 inch tall. Now, why say all of that? In subtle ways, if we begin to take Jesus, this is what an image does. You begin to take the invisible God, the eternal God, the God of wrath and grace, the God of grace and truth, the God who breaks every bound, the God who is bigger than anything we can see. We begin to take him and put him down into manageable little chunks. You remake a lesser God, and God will not have it. He will not have it. He's bigger. He's more awesome, more good, more glorious. So no replacing God with lesser things. No remaking God in our own image. Instead, one yes. What then do we say yes to? When God says no other gods and no graven images, what God is saying those for is so that we might say yes to the God of love and glory. This is not merely a commandment that is a commandment to us to flee from other gods, one writer writes. It is an invitation to run to the God of the universe, of the Exodus, of Bethlehem, of Calvary, and of the empty tomb. These whole 10 commandments have a backstory. There's a backstory you have to understand them in. It's the relationship between God and Israel. If you went to Massachusetts, if you had a time machine, or if you happen to have been in Massachusetts, Manchester, Massachusetts in 2004, July 8th, 2004, walking on Singing Beach. Anybody ever been there? The sound sounds like you're singing when you walk on it. That's what they say. If you were there, July 8th, 2004, you would have seen a young lady walking down to the beach in a black dress. If you know my wife, you would have recognized her right away. Then you would have seen another young man walking up to her on the sand. You might not have recognized him. That guy had hair, but it was me. And you would have seen that guy bow down, get down on one knee in front of her, and in the classic marriage proposal form, offer her a ring. And even if you didn't know us, you would have assumed they didn't just meet, right? The marriage proposal comes in the context of a relationship. Indeed, we met a year ahead of time, and that moment was a turning point in our relationship, but it was not the beginning of our relationship. What you have to understand if you're going to understand the 10 Commandments is that this is a turning point in the relationship between God and Israel, but it is not the beginning. Before God said, "Me and me alone," first, he came to Israel and said, "I'm going to save you. I'm going to show myself to you. I'm going to bring you out of Egypt." He says in verse 2, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." The Bible actually talks about it this way, that in a sense, Mount Sinai is the place in which God proposes and is married, joined in a covenant relationship to his people. But he didn't just do it right, but he brought them to the mountain first by sweeping them off their feet, hearing their cries for a Savior, bringing them out of Egypt, sweeping them into the desert. And then he says, look, I loved you first, but I'm calling you to now love me back and love me best. And all of the no is so that his people would say yes. Yes to the God who carried them out of their desperate situation and out of their slavery and saved them. This is the God. This is why God says, I am a jealous God. It's not the paranoid, crazy jealousy, damaging jealousy that we see in some human relationships. It's the kind of jealousy that says, if someone comes into your marriage partner and starts making moves on them, you're provoked, or you don't get what marriage is. And God here says, be my people, say yes to me. And of course, what we remember is that this God is the same God, is the God who came to us in the person of Jesus Christ, who came seeking us, dying for us, saving us, so that when we come to the communion table, do you understand? When you come to the communion table, you're proclaiming, we say every time, the life and the death of Jesus until he returns. What you are proclaiming is that Jesus, who died for you, has said, come and be mine. And when you come and take this bread and this cup, you're saying, yes, Jesus, I'm yours. I'm yours. You saved me, and I will live for you. We say no to other gods so we can say yes to the God of covenant love, who loves us first and loves us best. And also this God, we say yes to the God who can't be contained, who can't be tamed. I've recently had the opportunity to read through the Gospel of Mark again with somebody who's reading it through for maybe the first time. We read it through about every week. We read it through together and talk about the Jesus who is revealed in the Gospel of Mark. And I am just struck again and again by what an amazing person this Jesus is. There is no one like him. He explodes from the pages. Just when you think you've heard it a million times, he surprises you and says something else that shocks or scandalizes or amazes with his grace. There is no one like Jesus, and my hope for this church is that we would say no to any lesser anything, any remaking of Jesus, taking certain parts of him, leaving out certain other parts. Instead, we would say yes to the whole Jesus. We want the whole Jesus, all of who he is, all of what he has done for us. The whole Jesus, not a tamed, boxed, remade, lesser Jesus. The Jesus who holds little children in his arms and the Jesus who makes a whip to clean out the temple. Both. The Jesus who gets down like a servant, like a slave, and washes dirty feet. And then the same Jesus who stands up and commands the sea to be still, and they quiet at his voice. The Jesus who challenged the religious leaders and the Jesus who was silent before his accusers. The Jesus who spoke with authority and the Jesus who wept like he was falling apart at the tomb of his friend. The Jesus who died forsaken on a cross and the Jesus who rose with glory and ascended to the Father and will return. The whole Jesus. Don't accept any substitute. Passionately pursue this God if you want to have a living spiritual life, a vital spiritual life, one that doesn't become toxic or boring. Accept no replacements. Remake and never remake God into something lesser. We have the privilege to come to the tangible table that Jesus gave us, the bread and the cup, and to remember at this table this Jesus and worship him together. Would you take a moment as we prepare, as the deacons get ready, would you take a moment to prepare to come to this table to confess sin, if there's sin that needs to be confessed, to ask for God to show himself to you and draw near to you. And then let's come and I'll give instructions in just a moment, and we'll take the bread and the cup. Let's take a moment of prayer to prepare our hearts for communion.